Okay, the last part of the playbook, and we go into lots of detail on this one, is that this is a romantic partnership. In other words, the first thing was the covenant. So you need to know what kind of relationship that you're really building. This is a covenantal relationship, and there's ways in which you need to build that up. So that's the context or the soil of the relationship. But there's really two elements to the relationship. It's romance and partnership. Romance we talked about with date night. That's a tool we're going to go deep into this month. But on the partnership side, you also need to learn how to like have a business meeting for lack of a better word. And a lot of people don't know how to have a business meeting. We're calling that a co-founders meeting because you guys are both founding this branch of the family or this new family line. And that requires a partnership where you guys actually do fruitful things together. Obviously, part of that is just raising a family, but it can get really complex with like you're stewarding assets. You might even be building a business. You're educating children. There's a lot of businessy things that you got to discuss. You know, you got a house to like maintain and there's budgets and like all those fun things that April loves that I oh. So there's a place and time for that where we gotta like talk about these things. So yeah, what's one of the things that we're gonna work through this month on how to level up our co-founders meeting?
Well, the one that has meant a lot to me is engage your business brain.
Yeah.
So I think there a lot of times, like in a typical schedule, might be like the husband being gone at work all day and then coming home in time for dinner. And then after dinner is like baths and bedtime for the kids. And then comes post bedtime at like 8:30 at night. And for me, that was not a good time to start talking about the things that we needed to talk about in order to make decisions. Either I was totally exhausted or feeling like I would rather connect with my husband rather than talk about, you know, who we're going to be hosting next week for Shabbat dinner or something like that. So it was very hard to find a time where we had energy and even like the desire to have these conversations. But then Jeremy would go off to work the next day. And then there I am, like, "Ugh, I still have that question that we didn't answer. And I still haven't gotten back to this person about this thing. And so I still don't know. Um, I could maybe send a quick email to him. This was before there was a lot of texting going on, but I could have a quick communication with him to answer one simple question. But that it kind of creates this survival mode where you're just like quickly answering one problem as it crops up at a time. And I think it's important that at some point in your marriage and the life of your family, you're going to transition from survival mode into thriving. And I think it kind of goes up and down throughout, depending on what's going on in your life. But as you transition to thriving, what oftentimes is simultaneously happening is this intentionality that comes with thriving. So you get like one extra ounce of bandwidth, and it's like, okay, I'm going to think about next week. I have been thinking about today and then tomorrow, but what about next week? And so with that comes like, oh, I think it's been a while since we handled that HVAC problem, or we've been putting off this one roof repair, or we need to get the car fixed in this one way, or we've been putting off making the decision if we should upgrade our car. Like all of these things that like feel annoying to talk about, but you have to talk about them. Like Jeremy said, like choices about your children's education, things you're noticing about your kids' learning styles, hosting possibilities. What kinds of things are we going to be hosting this week or this month? And then, therefore, backing it up and saying, okay, well, then what are we going to serve and who's going to cook and how are we going to clean up? And like all these things are ways that help your family become more productive for the kingdom, more, you're able to pull things off better. And I just want to encourage you guys for this side of it, because if you're someone who kind of resists schedules or resists any kind of like planning, this might sound hard for you to be like, oh, I don't want to. The one time I have with my husband, I don't want to, or my wife, I don't want to like be talking about businessy things. I think it really is super helpful for your long term. Like you get reps at this and then you can pull bigger and bigger things off. You can have more and more, you're running a tighter and tighter ship. You can enfold more people into your family. You're able to represent the gospel better because you're not just like barely staying above water. So for us, what ended up happening was finding a time where I told Jeremy at one point, I was like, I need some time where your brain is still awake and active and I can get the benefit of that. I need your business brain. And so that's when he realized, like, oh, wow, I give a lot of my business mindset to the business and not to my family. and he started to kind of transition into that. So we realized that we just needed an hour, hour and a half a week. So we set up a time in our rhythm. I set up a babysitter for that day to get a bunch of stuff done. And one of the things was our business meeting. So we would have our business meeting at a Starbucks or something for an hour. He would be able to get away from work for an hour. And then I would stay and work on all the things we had just talked about because I knew as soon as I got home, I wouldn't be able to focus anymore. So I would make the phone calls or send the emails, the invites, or order the food or whatever the thing was. I would take some time to kind of implement the things we just talked about in our meeting. And it really helped us kind of catch up and start to have a flow. But I did need his like morning brain or his like business brain.
Yeah, there's some guys I'm sure that can come home and they've got all that energy still. But for me, yeah, that's like the worst time to possibly bring up things that are going to be hard for me to talk through logistics. I know another season you came into when I was a CEO of a company, you came in during lunch and, once a week and we would like literally we had whiteboards. I mean, I was just going from meeting to meeting to meeting all of a sudden, and then like you had an agenda planned and it felt so natural for me to go from solving all these problems and kind of working to just working on our family. And that was super helpful for me and not to like get hit with that in the morning. We've had to do this. I don't know some families who do this on Sundays. That's kind of like their maybe time of the week where they can really do businessy stuff. Other families or Saturday or whatever, if you have a day of rest on Sunday, but we tend to work half days on Sundays. It's just really about finding a time that where you have this energy. And I think one of the things you have to be really careful of in this is not to think sometimes people have very short fuses for businessy stuff because they have an expectation. Like a lot of times anger, frustration comes from violated expectations. And a lot of people have this expectation that family shouldn't require any planning. Family shouldn't require any kind of this kind of activity. And this is part of what we're constantly trying to express to people. This is a very modern way of thinking about family. The word economics actually came from the word oikos, oikosnomics, which is the word for household. This was a family thing. Families were economic entities that had a lot of businessy things to talk about and we still are. I know that as much as the world and kind of the current modern kind of capitalistic idea that families are only consuming units and they don't produce anything. Well, one of the reasons why we don't produce anything is we never plan to produce anything. Now, hopefully you're going to produce children and you're going to disciple those children. But, if God wants you to do ministry in and through your family, if God wants you to do economically productive activity in and through your family, you're going to need to be good at this. So anyway, we'd love to kind of help you guys for how to run a really successful, virtually prep free business meeting or co founders meeting that you guys are working on together. So that's our goal this month, just weaving together all of these things, right? Weaving
Yeah.
together the romantic side of the relationship. We don't want to leave that behind. We want that to get stronger and stronger. But we also want to talk about what are the things that we're doing to actually make the partnership side of the relationship thrive and function so that your family is progressing. And that this is actually a fun and exciting part. So I'm really curious what your questions are. So we're going to have a couple. We're going to interview next week. There's going to be a podcast where we're going to talk you guys through this topic from the perspective of Rhett and Ange Barber, who've been friends of ours for over 20 years. They're an amazing couple that have figured out how to do this. They've started businesses. They've raised such a successful family and they've really thought about how to like increase the romantic side of the relationship. So they're going to bring their whole toolbox to next week's podcast. So stay tuned for that. And then they're going to be our community coaches for the accelerator this month. So the month of March is coming up. So we want you guys to jump in there. And if you have questions about how to level up date nights, if you have questions about how to like pull off this co-founders meeting, go to familyteams.com, click on the accelerator, join us for this month or join us for this year and you'll get, this for every month. We're going to have a different theme, but this is the theme that we're going to be focusing on for this month. So I'm excited for you guys to jump in there and join us.